So welcome to the Saturday morning hunt for ratios and proportions. First thing I noticed, shoes. Shoes in the cabinet compared to shoes not in the cabinet. Well, let's talk about what a ratio and proportion is. If you look at page 142 in your book, it gives you a description. It's much clearer than this. And then I'll tell you about ratio and how that compares to a rate and a proportion and unit rate and all that stuff, but I'm going to give you a lot of examples of that. For example, first ratio we're going to look at are my husband's shoes compared to mine. We've got a lot of shoes. So looking at this, those are his and his, mine and mine, his, mine, his, mine, 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 mine. Yeah, pretty much just in case you lost count, that came down to the fact that the ratio of his shoes to my shoes is 10 to 23. I've got a lot more shoes. If we look in here, rates and ratios, we could compare how much of the floor is not covered by that rug to how much is, or how many pieces of furniture are in this room compared to the pieces of furniture in the other room. Maybe not that room. If we go in here into the kitchen looking at this, we have some rates and ratios in here. For example, how many dishes are in this cabinet? Well, dishes per cabinet. Anytime you use the word per, you're kind of getting into different things, like number of dishes and number of cabinets. That's a rate, because then you're comparing things of different dimensions. How many dishes are in all the cabinets combined? How much gas do we use each week? How much gas do we use when we turn it on and forget to turn it off? How many water bottles do we use? Ooh, cans. Cans on this shelf. If I look at the top shelf compared to the bottom shelf, there are 17 cans on the top shelf and 9 cans on the bottom shelf. Looking at just one can, we've got 270 milligrams of sodium. That's like a certain percentage of the day, but no calories, or excuse me, fewer calories, no cholesterol, no fat. Then we take a look over here, we have got laundry. How many loads of laundry do you do in one day? How many should you do in one day? That's a unit rate, anytime you bring it down to 1. Well, let's take a look at this for another example of a unit rate. In one container of this detergent, you get 170 loads of washing. That's a unit rate, because in one container, you have 170 loads. You'd have to turn it around the other way, though, and talk about 170 loads in one container, because the unit rate talks about in one. That's a recycling. How much do you recycle each day? That would be a rate, because it's different things. Ooh, toilet paper could be a very interesting one. How many rolls of toilet paper do you use in a month? How about a year? Let's not talk about a day. But again, that's a unit rate, because you're comparing different measures, dates and number of rolls of toilet paper. And we look at this, number of cups of coffee in one day. How many would I want compared to how many I actually drink? That would be a ratio, because I'm comparing things that are of the same unit. I need some gingerbread coffee for later. Good idea. Let's continue looking around the house. If we look, that was a bag of cereal. How many bowls of cereal do you eat in a day? Ooh, there's some good rates in there. If you do 1 pound of chicken, you have to defrost it for 5 minutes. How many do you have to do for 1.5 pounds of chicken? Saturday morning in pajamas. Woohoo! Looking at this, we've got a plethora of rates here and ratios and even proportions. We hit the jackpot here. Look at all the nutrition information on these boxes. If we take a look here, breakfast, we have Pop-Tarts. If you look at a Pop-Tart, look at this. There are 200 calories in one pastry. I never eat just one. Okay, maybe sometimes if I have a really good cup of gingerbread coffee. But most of the time I'm going to eat 2. So that means I'm getting 400 calories, because that's a proportion. Ooh, candy canes still left over. We could talk about how many candy canes do we have to eat each week in order to make sure that they're gone by the time it's time to go home for summer. Again, books on the shelf. Books on this shelf compared to books on the other shelf. Book in this section compared to books in the other section. Those would be ratios. But if I talk about how many books are on one shelf compared to the whole entire thing, that would be a unit rate. How much energy is being used up by these cords? How much energy is being used up when we aren't even home because we forget to unplug the cords or turn them off? Those are all rates, but it's ratios once you start comparing them to each other. You can set up proportions and figure out what would it look like. Again, number of pieces of furniture for each room, per room. Remember per, anytime you use that in the middle, if I say pieces of furniture per room, well, there are technically 3 pieces of furniture in this room, there were 3 in the other room, and there were 2 in the other room. So it's different. It's not the same rate for each one, but proportionally speaking, what should they be for each one? Number of games the Tar Heels lost compared to the number of games that the Tar Heels won. Anytime you give your record, you're really listing a ratio, games won compared to games lost. Ooh, here we have a whole bunch of DVDs. Do you guys even still have DVDs? What about CDs? Do you listen to those too? If we look here, some of these DVDs are illegal. My husband bought them. They're not mine. But if you look at these right here, some of these DVDs, well, the ratio of DVD to movie is 1 to 1. But here you have one DVD, but you have 8 movies on one DVD. I don't even know what these are. But still, the ratio is 8 to 1 or 1 to 8, depending on which dimensions you're looking at first. Phew. So there's a lot of rates and ratios around just our house. Again, talking about the different shelves compared to each other. What about the ones that are in the book? Those aren't even listed here. They aren't even written down. And then I have Christmas CDs in that little box right there. What about the number of Christmas CDs compared to the number of CDs that are secular CDs? That would be a ratio because the number of CDs is the unit. Here, I'm looking at all of my stuff in the living room here, and it just kind of makes me feel like I need to sit down for a minute. And then look, wow, well, there's our TV. I wonder how many number of hours of TV we watch each day. That would be a rate. Number of hours compared to number of hours not watched. Oh, in the bathroom, there's like so many rates going on. Look at this toothbrush, for instance. You're supposed to replace them every 3 months. So how much of the actual toothbrush do you use in just 1 month? That would be a unit rate. Also, we have mouthwash here. I've replaced this mouthwash at least once. I used up the last one, and I was so glad that it was gone because I don't really like the flavor anyway. But this mouthwash, I really like it, but I don't know how long I've been using it. But it would be interesting to know how much have I used compared to how much is left, and how long is it going to take me to finish this container, because we don't want to carry that home with us. Same thing with the soap. Supposedly, these new soaps, this is Bath & Body Works, by the way, but supposedly they are not going to be using as much soap. Well, then why are we paying the same amount if we're not paying for as much soap? That fancy little top there is supposed to mix it in with some water and make it foamy. And then I've got lotion and stuff that tells me how much is in there. And then the floss here, well, how much floss do I use each day? You know, I had these trial packs and I used them up in like a week, but this thing has been going on forever and ever. Here's how much I use in like a day. Let's go find out how much it is. Well, if you line it up with the ruler here, we figure out that it's 36.5 centimeters. Well, if I think really fast, I look here and I see the amount of floss that I use in each day. That's a unit rate because it's 1 day. Yeah, see, unit rate, because it's 36.5 centimeters in 1 day. Well, then how much do I use in 1 week? The thing is, these units aren't the same, so I have to make sure that I get the same unit. So I have to change it to days, and then I'm going to change the other side to days also. Well, this is pretty easy conversion because I know that there are 7 days in 1 week. Now that I have the proportions set up to where both of them are days, I can figure out F. F is going to stand for the amount of floss. So now I simply use cross multiplication to solve the proportion. And so now I know that 36.5 times 7 is going to give me 1 times F, which is just F. So 255.5 centimeters. I can't measure that. I don't even know how big that is. But I do know what a meter kind of looks like. So some dimension analysis, which I'll tell you more about today in class, some quick dimension analysis will let you see that 25.5, if I'm going to convert that to meters, I have to divide by 100 because I'm changing centimeters to meters. We'll look at unit analysis and dimension analysis and see how that can help us answer questions too and make sure our answer makes sense. Because what this says is that I use 2.5 meters of floss in a week. That's a lot of floss. How much do I use in 1 month? What about in a year? Pop-Tarts. How long does one Pop-Tart take to cook? How much does one Pop-Tart take to eat? Time to number of Pop-Tarts eaten. That's a rate because it's different units. How long is my race going to take tomorrow? There's a rate.